Terrorists have shelled a number of government-controlled residential areas in the embattled Syrian city of Aleppo. Syrian state media report that 13 civilians were killed and 43 others injured in the attacks. Local officials say that the terrorists launched the assault as worshippers were leaving mosques after Friday prayers. Well, it comes as Russia and Syria have been heavily criticized for their recent offensive in Aleppo. Western leaders and media have been condemning their actions, accusing the two countries' militaries of killing scores of civilians. Well, on that point, we spoke exclusively with Syria's ambassador to the UN, Bashar Jafari.
We need to ask ourselves these genuine questions. It is not about a president and a government killing their own people. This is wrong. This is hypocrite. This is a big lie. A government responsible such as the Syrian government wouldn't kill its own people. What would be the benefit for us to kill our own population? Give me an answer. 275,000 civilians, unfortunately, are taken hostages by the terrorists of Al-Nusra Front and Jaish al-Fatah and all these terrorist groups changing their labels around the clock and preventing them and using them, of course, as a human shield and preventing them from getting out of the eastern part of Aleppo through the 4 humanitarian corridors opened by both the Russians and the Syrian army.
Well, the al-Nusra terror group mentioned by Mr. Jafari is being targeted by the Russian strikes. It's the same group that Washington pledged to separate from the so-called moderate rebels in Syria last December, but failed to do so as yet. On Friday, the State Department admitted that the U.S. has not been going after the al-Qaeda affiliate for months. Andrew Farmer discussed that admission with former CIA policy advisor Fred Fleitz.
You hit Nusra, I believe you described it as Al-Qaeda, maybe in March or something, or February. It was earlier this year.
Yep.
Since then, there hasn't been any specific action against Nusra, is that right? Military action?
No, but I'd have to double check. I just can't definitively say that. As they became intermingled, and as they became intermingled in civilian areas, we've always sought to limit the possibility of civilian casualties.
One argument that's put forward is that America really hasn't tried very hard or seems to be very ineffective in separating so-called moderate rebels from terrorist groups. Why is it proving to be so difficult?
You're exactly right. I don't think that this administration has had any serious policy for the situation in Syria or the situation in Iraq. And as I said earlier, that has created a power vacuum that other states are taking advantage of, including Russia.
But it does bomb terrorists, doesn't it? It does bomb ISIL, it does bomb al-Nusra.
Well, I'm not denying that, but I think Russia's objective is to take advantage of a power vacuum caused by the Obama administration.
What's the way forward now, Fred?
Well, I'm hoping if we have a Donald Trump administration that we will get a new international alliance, including NATO troops, to restore law and order and stability to Syria, move Iran out of that nation, and bring stability to the region. I think that's quite a stretch, but I don't see any other solution.
Well, how will that bring stability when you look at the example of Libya and Iraq?
I think there's a way with an international alliance, with regional states and NATO troops, to completely wipe ISIS out. I think taking ISIS out in Syria is going to be messy and expensive, and there will be loss of life. But the only way to do it, I think, is a multinational coalition led by NATO with regional states participating.
Which would also take out the Syrian government.
I think the Syrian government should be pressured to leave office if such a coalition enters Syria.
And if it doesn't?
Well, we may have to take it out.
Despite facing condemnation, the Russian anti-terror campaign in Syria has proven to be effective against Islamist extremists. In the years since it began, terror groups, including ISIL, have been rapidly losing ground. The most symbolic victory was the liberation of Palmyra. Murat Gazdiev returned to the ancient city for us to recall how it suffered under Islamic State's control.
It was here, in this amphitheater, which dates back almost 2,000 years, that ISIS carried out one of its worst atrocities. In this case, the victims, captured soldiers, were marched out onto the stage and made to kneel. They were followed by their executioners, who were children. It was the bloodiest show Palmyra had seen in a while, and they made sure everyone saw. They had cameras up across the perimeter, and they made the locals sit in the stands and watch. They weren't done with them just there. Later, they gathered up the men, women, undesirables, and butchered them. After that, they got demolishing. ISIS demolished monuments which had stood for almost 2,000 years. They had withstood emperors, empires, kings, and rulers of all kinds. They did it knowing how important these ruins are to humankind.
Murat Gazdiev reporting. Well, the city of Al-Qaryatin also suffered almost a year of Islamic State control. Eventually, though, the militants were forced out by Russian and Syrian forces. The city is attempting to get back to normal, with residents slowly returning home.
Our whole family returned to Al-Qaryatin after the ISIS militants left. The Syrian army chased them away. They saved us from them. Russians also helped us. It is mostly thanks to them that we were able to come back to our city.
There is a select set of currencies which the IMF keeps as reserves, and now it's got a new member. I'll tell you who's in the money and why it matters after the break.